Growing can be a challenging journey. At the same time, it can be a rewarding one if you have realistic expectations that allow you to enjoy your success and accomplishments along the way. To make sure your journey is successful, in this episode, we'll discuss how to keep realistic expectations on your growing journey. Let's get growing. Hello, and welcome to the Pray Just Plant podcast, the show that talks about growing a garden, a homestead, a healthy family, and most importantly, growing closer to God. I'm your host, Crystal Media, owner of the Red Ridge Farm Homestead, where our mission is to help women of faith find the courage to grow healthy food for their family while building a closer relationship with our Lord and Savior. That's you. Don't let the world hold you back. Pray, just plant. Hello, fellow growers. Welcome to the Pray Just Plant podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Media, and today, in Season 10, Episode 5, we are going to discuss realistic expectations on our growing journey. We're going to go over some main points of identifying your goals, building habits, taking time to reflect, surrounding yourself with positive people, and allowing yourself to fail. These are just some few parts of having those realistic expectations. Sometimes as growers, especially in the just grow stage, I'll explain that in a minute, we're really focused on trying to get all of our things done. We have this vision in our mind and we want it now. But we have to have realistic expectations, especially when it comes to growing. We have weather to combat. We have our time constraints. We have our knowledge constraints and much more. And it is absolutely okay to go at this growing journey of growing your own food, creating peace, joy, happiness in your home, connecting with God in bite-sized pieces. In fact, Just Grow stage is the first stage of what I have created and what I call the Purposeful Growing Success Path. Each stage on this path logically walks you through that growing journey in perfect step and perfect stages so that you can grow and expand and build that foundation first and then grow and create that dream homestead or that growing journey that you've been craving. And in this stage, the Just Grow stage, that's what we're going to be talking about today in this episode and focusing on that stage a little bit more in depth. But you're just starting out. You're getting your goals figured out. You're getting your realistic expectations figured out. And we're going to talk about that. And then as you mature, as you get growing on this journey, you're going to move into the purposeful kitchen stage and then the purposeful home stage where you are in the kitchen and the home, you're just figuring out this life. Maybe you don't have the land yet, or maybe you're not ready for that step on your knowledge path and you want to build that base, that foundation, and that's in your home and that's in your kitchen. And then you have growing outside with the purposeful garden and the purposeful homestead. And finally, the last stage is the purposeful life, where you have not really everything figured out, but you're expanding on all the other stages. And maybe you're creating an income from your homestead, or maybe you're creating more peace and joy and bringing family in, and it's not just you. Or you're growing to 80-90% of your food on your own. That's what the purposeful life is, and that's where you're going towards. That's what your goal may be, but you want to start somewhere. That's perfect. You are in the Just Grow stage. And if you want to learn more about each of these stages and the kind of guidelines that I suggest that tells you in what stage you're at, what you need to accomplish before you move on to the next stage, I will put a web page that I have brought all of that information together for you. It even has some action steps that you can start working towards in each stage so that you can get growing on your growing journey. And I'll put that in the show notes and in the description below. But let's get back to realistic expectations. When we're on our growing journey, we focus on, and it's really easy in this day and age and in this society, that we want instant gratification. And that is amazing. There is some instant gratification that does keep us moving forward. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But we also need to focus on the pieces that will help us grow now so that we can also grow in the future. Realistic expectations allow us to not burn out because we feel like we're doing too much. It allows us to not feel like a failure because we didn't get the long list that we thought we should get done. And it also gives us encouragement to say, hey, guess what? We're creating a real life. We're not creating a fake one. We're creating a real life with different education, different changes in our family, different changes in our schedule, and just new things that we've never done before. And it's okay to move slowly through that. So identifying your goals. When you look at your growing journey or starting your growing journey by first identifying goals or identifying your why, you're going to be able to have more realistic expectations because you're going to be able to have little wins, but your goals are going to help you narrow down on a few things. So if you have a goal of learning to grow your own food, but the idea of doing all the long list right now, especially through the success path of doing everything, the kitchen, the home, the garden, and the homestead all in 1 year, is unrealistic. A more realistic goal would be to focus in on one of those stages or focus in on one new thing that you can learn, and you're going to have more success. And by identifying your goals, you're also going to break those goals down, because a goal isn't just a whim. A goal is where you write down not only what you want to accomplish, but you're going to write down how you're going to accomplish it, how you're going to keep yourself accountable, and much more, which essentially moves into building habits. And that's our next topic. I have a 1-page document that walks through the essential steps of building habits, because in our everyday life, you probably have habits that you don't even realize that you do. Like maybe your mother taught you that you need to make your bed every single morning. And now just automatically, as soon as your husband is routed out, you start making your bed. You don't know why, but you do it. It makes you feel good. That's a habit. And so when we identify goals, which in a previous podcast episode, we talked about how habits need to be tied into your growing journey, and that habits can help you succeed in your growing journey, that once you have that goal, you can now break it into action steps. If your goal is to learn how to cook from scratch, then you need to have some habits that help you do that. You need to maybe have a meal plan habit, or at least a habit where you are watching certain videos every day or every week that will teach you how to cook from scratch. Or you decide that you're going to spend, when you are doing your meal planning, you're going to add one new recipe or one new cooking from scratch idea once a month. Those are going to build on themselves. So you created the goal, you created the parameters of the goal, and then you're figuring out how you can make that goal and put it into your everyday by creating anchors, by naming it. I go through all of this on that one sheet of paper. It's a very simple document. We'll ask you a few questions on how you can keep accountable with your habits and much more. Be sure to grab that. It's a free document. It's free because I want to help you guys on your growing journey. You're going to break down that goal. You're going to put it into a habit. You're going to find something that you could do either every day or every week. And then you're going to tie that to an anchor that you're already doing. And you're going to be able to step forward with it. And when you have realistic expectations, especially when it comes to building habits, you know that you can only probably learn a new habit 3 a month or 3 every 6 weeks. So it's going to help you really narrow down and really focus in on just a few of those things that you want to change in your everyday. The next thing that you're going to need to do when you have realistic expectations, especially on your growing journey, and you want success and you want to keep it realistic, but you always want to keep moving forward, is you need to take time to reflect. A lot of times, maybe this is you, and I know it was certainly me, I would make my goals and I would write down my habits, but I wouldn't ever give myself time to go back and say, how did I do? Did I keep up with that habit of taking my liver pills every day? Did I keep up with that habit of creating a meal plan every week? Did I keep up with the things that were on my list? How about relooking at my goals? Oh, right, I was going to do planting a raspberry patch in the spring, so I need to reassess my goals. I need to take time to look at the goals I made in January and reflect on them and say, okay, now it's time I can work on that goal. And taking time to reflect on stuff, which is what I call weekly review, helps in so many other ways, because you're going to keep realistic expectations, because you're going to see your everyday life in your goals. You're going to see why you didn't accomplish that habit or you didn't accomplish that goal that week because the kids were sick or you weren't feeling good, or there was a huge snowstorm and you just couldn't get outside. That's going to show you that it's not all on you for your journey to succeed. Sometimes life steps in and it's unexpected. When your life now rotates and fluctuates with the seasons and with what the weather is outside, and if the grasshoppers are really bad this year, or like this year we're having a really late cold spring. Still, as I record this episode, we're under 3 feet of snow and it's the middle of April. So how am I supposed to move forward in my garden goals if I can't get outside? So when we take time to look back at what we expected of ourselves and what actually happened, we can rest in it that life happens. And if it also is our fault that we didn't do it, then we can adjust that habit. Maybe we need a different anchor. Maybe I need to tie taking my liver pills every morning with breakfast, or with as soon as I get up, or something, another anchor that will give me more success. So reflection is key when it comes to moving forward on our growing journey. This next tip that I have for you is something that I didn't do for years, and that was surround myself with not necessarily positive people, but other people that were going through the same things that I was doing. Yes, we don't want someone that complains a lot. We don't want someone that's going to drag us down, but sometimes it's nice to have a complaining buddy. Sometimes it's nice to say, hey, how is your garden doing this year? Well, it's not doing very great. And you're like, well, mine's not doing very great either. And then you realize that maybe the reason your garden's not doing very great is because it's a crappy year for tomatoes. Everything has its season. Everything has a flow to it. And that means that other people could be having the same problems you are having. The other thing with helping and creating community around yourself is that you can bounce ideas off someone else. Maybe they're making a habit of something like you want to, and you're asking them, how are they getting it done? Or better yet, you have an accountability partner, someone to talk to and say, hey, I need you to remind me that I wanted to plant or start my orchard this year. And I know you sort of started an orchard last year. What are some tips that you could give me that would help me remember to do it, or help me to make sure those trees get watered, and so on and so forth? Surrounding yourself with people that are on that same journey as yourself is going to keep you realistic, because one, each of you aren't going to, as this is kind of a side note, I guess a disclaimer is you each aren't going to have the same journey, and you can't fall into the comparison, but you can use each other as someone to reflect with, or someone to complain with, because sometimes a growing season is really hard. I know when we've had cicadas really bad and my new apple trees were almost shriveling because the cicadas were eating them, and I'm an organic grower and I was out there flicking those bugs every day. Having someone to say, isn't that disgusting, flipping those bugs off those trees every day? Isn't it gross? And they're like, yeah, I totally agree with you. Having someone to connect with and have that community with is going to help you succeed, and also keep those realistic expectations, because they're going to show you that they are dealing with failure or they're succeeding just as well as you are. The last thing that I want to talk about, and this is just a really quick episode, I know, but the last thing I want to talk about is allowing yourself to fail. God intended us, we as humans intended the way we learn, the way we function, is that we learn from our failures. But if we sit there and tell ourselves that we cannot fail and that failing is wrong, then we rob ourselves of the opposite. When we say that we cannot fail, we also rob our wins. Because if we allow ourselves to fail and then we come back from that failure and get a win out of it, or change it around and fix it, we're going to have better gratitude. We're going to have better reflection. We're going to have a better satisfaction, because we realize that we can do something, and that we can learn, we can grow, we can move forward when we do fail. And sometimes when we rob ourselves of the fail and say that we can't fail, then we don't have much measure from everyday life. do we? Because if everyday life was the same and if you look at a graph and we're always in the middle and we never can go down, then everything that we do good only can go so far up. So look at it maybe as a tree, right? When we look at a tree, we only see the trunk, the leaves, and the growth up top. And if we only focus on the growth up top and never allow ourselves to look at a tree's roots or to look at our failures, as yes, sometimes we try to hide them as trees, their roots are hidden. But if we look at the height of a tree from the very tip of its roots to the very tip of its branches, that tree is twice as tall. And if I come from that failure and not only come to, a pretty good tomato crop, to an amazing tomato crop, that growth, that accomplishment feels bigger. So when we're looking at that tree and we only look at the ground up, we only see half the tree. We don't see the full growth of that tree. We don't see the full curve of coming from way down below and then coming all the way to the top. And isn't that amazing? That huge amount of growth that a tree has, but yet we do not see. So when we don't allow ourselves to fail, we cannot see the full amount of our growth either. So it's okay to fail. And I'm going to tell you right now, with another small disclaimer, that there's going to be some big fails on your growing journey. When it comes to animals and situations that you can't control, there's going to be things that you feel that are your failures, but sometimes are completely not yours. I mean, I had a hailstorm. It's been 6 years now. My garden was doing amazing. We were on the cusp of harvesting. It was like the first week of August because we were having my family over for my son's birthday. And a huge hailstorm went through our property. It missed the neighbor's garden down the road, it missed other places, but completely wiped out my garden. Now, that was a failure, yes, but it was not my failure. It was an happenstance, but I took it as my failure because all of that work, all the work that I had done, all the work that my family had done was completely gone. And it took me probably I was actually not going to grow a garden the next year. I was that upset. And if you go to my blog, when I first started my blog, I had a few poems that I wrote as well as some farm updates. And one of the poems that I wrote was Pray Just Plant. And it talks about how that feeling of that storm coming in, that feeling of it just, you're standing there and you can see the clouds come in and you can smell the hail and and you're just praying that it doesn't hit you, but it does hit you. But you just still have to pray and you still have to just plant. In fact, this podcast is named after that poem. So I will put that poem in the show notes. I hope you go check it out. I had to find some outlet. I had to find something and talking to other people about their journeys and their hailstorms that have wiped them out. I had to find that peace. And I can't read the whole thing without crying. I will tell you that right now. That's why I'm not reading it to you. That helped me connect back to coming out of that failure, to wanting to grow a garden again. Because every year, no matter what it is, we have to pray and we have to just plant. We have to ask for strength from God. We have to get on bended knee sometimes and just be like, why did that happen? And you don't understand it. I've had animals die and I don't know why. I've had things that just happen, but we have to take that next step too. We have to just plant. We have to just keep moving forward. And we can't ever grow if we don't ever accept failure, or at least acknowledge that it's going to happen. So your growing journey requires focus, patience, realistic expectations. Identifying the right goals and building the right habits are essential components of the journey. Don't forget to take time to reflect on where you are, who you are surrounding yourself with, and allow yourself to fail along the way. All of these components will help you keep a realistic expectations as you navigate your growing journey. Follow these tips to keep realistic expectations on your growing journey and never stop striving for growth. Visualize that full tree for yourself, not just half of it, the full tree, those roots, those things that you have grown from. You may not see them every day. You may not feel them in your everyday life, but you started at one point and you are going to grow to a new point. So remember that. To learn more about goal making and getting started, check out the Just Grow stage of the Purposeful Growing Success Path. And I will put that link in the description and the show notes. What are the show notes? They're a place where I dive a little bit deeper. Some of these podcast episodes have a full blog post. If we go into my tips and tricks or reading it out of the Bible, you will find all that information in the show notes. So I want to thank you for joining me here at the Pray Just Plant podcast. And as always, don't let the world hold you back. Pray Just Plant. This week's episode is brought to you by the Red Ridge Farms Builds ebook. This ebook was designed to help you get building on the homestead and even designing your homestead with permaculture principles. Grab your copy by going to www.redridgefarm.org/getbuilding or click on the link in the description below.